Okay, guys, so just to recap, when you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, across from the 30, considering we're on the unit circle, let's say that, considering we're on the unit circle, across from the 30 is what? 1, you got it. Across from the 60 is root 3, and across from the 90 is 2. Now let's talk about the 45, 45, 90. Again, we're assuming we are on the unit circle. So if we're on the unit circle, across from the 45 is 1, across from the other 45 is again 1, and across from the 90 is root 2. And now let's talk about where the trig functions are positive. So do you guys remember all students take calculus?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? In quadrant 1, all are positive. In quadrant 2, what's positive? Sine and the reciprocal of sine, cosecant, are positive. What about in quadrant 3? Tan and its reciprocal, which is cotangent, are positive. And what about in quadrant 4? Good, you got it. Let's do orange. Cosine and secant are positive. So now, I'll let you copy this down, and then I'll show you where we're going with this. This was just sort of a quick recap of everything we're going to need for today. Yes, we're ready? Nobody's copying still? Okay. So what I want us to do is I want us to find theta. And I'm telling you theta will be between 0 degrees and 360, including 0, but not including 360. So if we get to that 360, it's 0, not 360. Okay, the first problem we're going to do is the cosine of theta is equal to negative 1 over root 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my grid, and I'm going to remember, based on SOHCAHTOA, that cosine is ca, and what does cosine pair? It pairs the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Right, now, oh, sorry, it is adjacent. I was just making sure you all knew that. I can't be perfect all the time. All right, so it's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. But now what I'm looking at, do we see how the cosine of this angle ends up being negative? So that's going to help us determine which quadrants we're going to be in. Because where is cosine negative? Well, remember, all students take calculus. So cosine is positive in quadrant 4 and quadrant 1. But where is it negative? In quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. So I'm making my triangle in quadrant 2 first. So I go to quadrant 2. I'm going to make my triangle there because I know that's where cosine, one of the places cosine is negative. The acute angle coming from the origin, I'm calling that theta. And now I'm going to label my triangle. So adjacent to theta will be 1, and the hypotenuse will be root 2. So adjacent to theta is 1. The hypotenuse is root 2. Anybody confused with how I got those numbers 1 and root 2? Okay, great. We're going to get there, yeah? So now you tell me, what kind of triangle does this have to be if this side is 1 and this side is root 2? This is a 45, 45, 90, which means this side has to be also 1. So what does that mean for theta? It has to be how many degrees? 45 degrees. But it's 45 degrees in quadrant 2. Is that really 45 degrees? No, that's 180 minus 45, because it's really this angle that we're looking for, right? So remember 0, 360, 90, 180, 270. So theta will be 180 minus 45, which is 135. And Matt was right when he said the 1 on the bottom should be negative. Because that 45-degree angle is in quadrant 2. So that's not really representing 45 degrees. That's representing 45 degrees in quadrant 2. But a real 45 degrees would be in quadrant 1, because quadrant 1 is between 0 and 90. So when we make that 45 in quadrant 2, it's really from 0 all the way to here, or 180 up, which is 135. Okay. We're not done that yet, though, because we said it could be 135 because that's where cosine is negative. But isn't cosine negative in another location? Yeah, so now we have to see what would it be if it was in quadrant 3. So now we have to do this all over again, but in quadrant 3. We're still using the 45 degrees, though, because we knew it was the 1 and root 2, which means this one is negative and this one is negative. So what would a 45 degrees in quadrant 3 be? How would I find that one? Any guesses? So remember, this is 0, 360. This is 90. This is 180. This is 270. So what I'm going to do is I always use the x one. But now I'm not subtracting from 180. What am I doing since I'm going towards 270? I should take that 45 and add it to 180. So this is going to be 180 plus 45, which will be 225 degrees. So theta will equal 135 or 225. Those are our options for theta. A little bit different. Yes, Nico?
And the 225 is supposed to be like for the fourth quadrant?
The third quadrant, right here. It can't be the fourth quadrant because the fourth quadrant has to go from 270 to 360. 225 is less than 270. So that's the third quadrant. Let's do another one. Yep. Anybody still copying? All right, next one. So I'm going to have the sine of theta is equal to 1 over 2. So remember, all students take calculus. 0 degrees, 360, 90, 180, 270. Again, we're finding theta. But the sine of theta, isn't this positive? It's saying a positive. Danielle, are you with me? No, you're not. Take your AirPods out, please. All right, so the sine of theta is a positive 1 over 2. So we're going back to our all students take calculus. Where is sine positive in which quadrants? 2 and 1. So these two quadrants, sine is positive. So those are going to be the two angles I have to find. I'll go to quadrant 1 first. We always call theta the angle coming from the origin. And based on SOHCAHTOA, isn't sine the opposite over the hypotenuse? So here's my theta. Opposite theta is 1. The hypotenuse is 2. Does anybody know what kind of triangle we're dealing with? A 30, 60, 90. So what does that mean for theta? Is it a 30 or is it a 60? How did you know it's 30 and not 60? Because across from 30 is the 1, which means this has to be root 3, right? Do I have to add or subtract from 180 at all? No, because we're in quadrant 1, so that's where 30 belongs. So we're going to say theta can be 30 degrees.
Do you have to indicate like theta equals 30 degrees in quadrant 1?
No.
We just get it, I guess.
Because if it's 30 degrees, it has to be in quadrant 1. Because any other quadrant, we're going to add or subtract from 180 or 360. Okay, now let's do the same thing, but now let's make this triangle in quadrant 2. And again, once you find your reference angle, it's the same reference angle in all the triangles. It's a negative root 3. Okay, so now if we're 30 degrees in quadrant 2, how do I find what that's equivalent to, 30 degrees in quadrant 2?
180 minus 30.
You got it. So now this angle will be 180 minus 30, which is 150. So theta is 30 degrees or 150 degrees. Do you guys want to try one on your own?
Yeah.
Okay, try this next one on your own. So if I'm making negative root 3 into a ratio, what is it? Negative root 3 over 1, if that helps. Try your best. We'll go over it. The 120 is good. The other one's not. You can't be in quadrant 1 because tangent's positive in quadrant 1.
Wait, I mean, if I was saying confused,
All students take calculus. So the C here for tangent means it's positive here. Which one is positive? So it's the, right here. All students take calculus. So the letters represent what's positive. So here for A means everything's positive here, all of them. The S here means sine is positive, and the T here means tangent is positive, and here means cosine is positive. So where the letters are, that's what's positive. So where it's not, that's where it's negative. So tangent is positive in quadrant 3, and in quadrant 1, so it's negative in these two. I didn't do it. And you don't want to be
I'm gonna have to do something to it. I just don't know what I'm doing. Like,
so you were
Is it
good.
270 minus 60?
No, you always go from the x-axis, so it's 360 minus
I thought it was always 180.
Well, there's no 180 there, so on this side it's 360, right? It's always the x-axis.
Okay.
So it'd be 360 minus 60, but you're in the wrong quadrant. That's why you messed up here.
I'm over here.
Oh, here. Okay, yes. So see how this whole thing is 360, but then you're going down some, so it's 360 minus 60.
It just matters what side of the,
The x-axis you're on.
Okay.
Well, it's not 30 this time. It's, well, you put your angle in the wrong place. Yeah, because tangent is opposite over adjacent, right? So, oh, you switched it, opposite over, that's why. If you were, then that would be the 60 here. Yep, your idea was right there.
How come this is this answer is 150 then? Because it's on this side.
But it wasn't on that side. So this side was here, right? So it's closer to the 180. That was this angle. So it's 180 minus 30.
Oh, this was the second one. Okay. Makes sense.
All right, we ready? Let's go over this. So, first thing we're going to do is figure out which quadrant we're in. All students take calculus. So our tangent is negative. Because our tangent is negative, that means I am not allowed to be in quadrant 1 because they're all positive in quadrant 1, and I'm not allowed to be in quadrant 3 because the T means tangent's positive in quadrant 3. So that brings us to quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Those are where my two angles are going to be. So we have 0, 360, 90, 180, 270. And now we have tangent based on SOHCAHTOA means opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to go first into quadrant 2. And here's my theta. The theta is always the angle coming from the origin. Opposite theta is root 3. Adjacent to theta is 1. We know this would have to then be negative 1. What does theta have to be? 60. Anybody not understand how I knew that theta is 60? Because that's a big part of this. We're good? Okay, so now 60 in quadrant 2 is not 60. What is 60 in quadrant 2? It's 180 minus 60, which is 120. So theta equals 120. Now I'm doing the same thing in quadrant 4. Well, what's a 60-degree angle in quadrant 4? It's not going to be 60 degrees. So you always go from the x-axis. So this time this is 360. What's 360? Since I'm going down, I'm not going to add 60. I'm going to subtract. So it's 360 minus 60, which is 300. All right, let's try another one.
Is this it?
I have to show you the unit circle, and then that will be it. So we'll do this one, and then the unit circle, and then we'll be done. So this will be the secant of theta equals negative 2, the negation or the negation of 2 over root 3. Secant's the reciprocal of what? You got it. Secant reciprocal of cosine. So let's bring it here. All students take calculus. Since secant's the reciprocal of cosine, we're going with the rules of cosine. My secant is negative. Because my secant is negative, what are the 2 quadrants I must be in? 2 and 3. And because it's secant, it's the reciprocal of cosine. So katoa. Do we agree this is going to be the hypotenuse over adjacent for secant? So let's start in quadrant 2 first. Am I going too fast? We're okay? Okay. So I'm starting in quadrant 2. My theta is always coming from the origin. This time my hypotenuse is here first, the 2. My adjacent is root 3. We'll make that a negative. And what kind of triangle am I dealing with? A 30, 60, 90. Do we agree this missing side is 1? So what does theta have to be? 30. Perfect. Yep. 30 degrees in quadrant 2 is not 30 degrees. What is 30 degrees in quadrant 2? 150. Is this my only answer? No, we also have to have a triangle in which quadrant? 3. So I'm now making my triangle in quadrant 3. So what is a 30-degree angle in quadrant 3? Mm, 180 is right here. So we're going to do 180 plus 30. Why would I add it? Because, I'll show you. So from this to this, right, we're going from 180 to 270. So this is getting bigger. Our angle's getting bigger. So we're going 30 degrees past 180. Before this, we're going 30 degrees before 180. So this time we add the 30 degrees. So when we add the 30 degrees, we're going to get 210. All right, let me show you the unit circle, and then we are done. You will have homework tonight, though. I know. Really? I don't ever usually give homework that much.
You haven't only like 2 weeks, honestly.
All right, special cases. So we're between 0 and 360. We include 0. We do not include 360. So I want us once again to find theta. Doesn't want to erase. It won't erase. There we go. So I want us to find theta. And the first one is going to be the sine of theta is equal to 0. Right, so obviously this is not opposite hypotenuse, adjacent, right? It's none of those. So that means that we are on the unit circle. And with the unit circle, let's go ahead. We have 0, 360, 90, 180, 270. And now we write our unit circle points. Over here it's the point 1, 0. Over here is the point 0, 1. Over here is the point negative 1, 0. And lastly, we're at the point 0, negative 1. Should you remember those coordinates? Should we have those memorized? Absolutely. Okay, so when we're on the unit circle, we want not O and H and A's, we want X, Y's, and R's. So if you remember, sine on the unit circle is Y over R. And what is the radius always? Radius is always 1. All right, so now in order for the sine of this angle to be 0, we need the y coordinate to be 0. Where is the y coordinate 0? Right here and right here. So that means we're at 180. Theta equals 180, and what else? 0. How come it's not 360? How come I just put the 0 and not the 360? You don't know? Because originally in my restrictions, see how I put the line underneath the inequality sign? So it's including 0, but I didn't put the line in the inequality for 360, meaning we're not including 360. It would be minus 1, because we're not following the restrictions.
Makes sense.
All right, let's do two more?
One more.
Two more. You guys do these two. Unit circle's easy.
Yeah,
So I'll leave it right next to my unit circle. Cosine of theta equals negative 1.
Do they always have two values?
Uh-huh. No. Unless it's 180, then it's only one value.
Okay. There's my answer. Okay, but you got 180 and 0 over here.
Oh, I guess in certain times, if it's 180, then it's just 1. Yeah, because when it's 180, it's not always just 180, but sometimes it's only 180.
Okay.
All right, what does this look like? So cosine of theta, isn't cosine x over r? And r is always 1, so we have negative 1 over 1. So I need where my x is negative 1. So we're going to look, what's the only scenario where my x is negative 1? 180. Is it negative 1 anywhere else? No, so this is only 180 degrees. That's it, nothing else. Give you one more. We'll say the cotangent of theta equals 0. This one's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, because the radius.
There's no radius in this one. So what is cotangent? What over what?
X over y.
X over y. So what we need is we need y not to be 0. Because if y is 0, what is that? Undefined. Does this end up working? Wait, does it end up working? I just made it up. So we need y to be 1. Could y be 1? Yeah, this works. It works.
Wait, but why
And we
is-
need x to be 0. So we need y to be plus or minus 1 and x to be 0.
I'm so confused.
Why are you confused?
X just has to be 0. Y doesn't matter.
No, y can't be 0.
Well, yeah,
But on the unit circle, they won't both be 0. You're right.
that's what I'm-
Yep, yeah.
So it just has to be the top of the box.
Mm-hmm.
9 and 270.
That's cool. I like that.
You're confused?
X
Okay.
just has to be
So in order to have 0, right, x has to be 0. So in which point is x 0?
That one.
This one and
That one.
this one. So it's 90 and 270.
Oh, so that's your, okay, so that's your final answer.
Yeah. All right, we should have gotten, where is x 0? 90 and 270. All right, we're done. I miss you, Soph, if you're watching me.